The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, I just activated it. We're going to start in a couple minutes just because a lot of people typically, if this is the first time they've used one of these things, they are they're downloading the client. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now. It's just a background. If you can use the chat box just to make sure that's working. I just said hi. Hopefully my senior dog won't be barking at me anytime through this. So let me look at the record button. We are recording, so good. Yeah, like I said, we'll start in a couple minutes, like literally 2 minutes. And then as people join, that's great. Oh, okay. There are a bunch of people asking questions. Good. Howdy, howdy. I can see your mouse moving around too. Hi, Paul. Hope it's okay. I'm here. Don't want to be upset the Inventables. That's all cool. I guess the question box is active. I don't know why the chat box is not active. I'll have to figure that out. So I guess use the question box for now and figure out why the chat's not working, but oh, there's one of the dogs. And I'm not going to put myself on web camera because I've got a face for radio here. So the attendee list is hidden from the attendees. That is not done on purpose. So let me see if there's a setting for that. I'm not trying to purposely hide anyone from seeing anybody else, but I don't see a setting for that. So let me see. So JJ, I didn't set that up on purpose like that, but I might have to when I create a webinar, and probably the next one, I'll see if that's a setting in the creation part, because there's no way that there's no setting here in the once I'm in the webinar to let attendees see other attendees, like who's on. So I apologize for that. All right, when do we? That's 4 pass. So a couple of things. I first and foremost apologize for last week. Feels like a month ago. But about and I work for a company called Millionaire. Blah blah blah. But basically, we're a fixed based operator. We're basically the gas station at airports. So is what we do, and amongst other things. So I work with the military and these really large cargo aircraft. That's what my focus is, to get them to use our locations, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I also support the Air Force in what they'll designate as weird places. So, because we know a ton of people and they know a ton of people. So when they need to go someplace that they normally don't go, and they don't know where to go at a certain location, I mean, they have all kinds of softwares and stuff, but it's a matter of trust, and filling in the blanks of equipment and other stuff. So basically, they call me in sometimes. It's like, hey, we got to go into weird places in Africa or someplace in Asia, et cetera, South America. They'll ask me if I know anybody, or do we have a location in a certain part of the world, and I kind of go through, my network and match up their needs with good providers. So our guys and gals that are flying these heavy airlift or refueling flights can go someplace where they can have reliable service. So anyhow, that popped up, and it's kind of a 24-hour type of gig. So that popped up a couple hours before the last webinar, and I just got overwhelmed. So by the time I came up for air, I was like, oh shit, I missed the whole thing. So anyhow, blah, blah, blah. Apologize. I'm going to start this sort of the same way I started the initial one we did in December, which is, listen, I've been doing this for about a year with the X-Carve, new to CNC. I've made tons of mistakes. I learn from them. I wish and I ask a lot of questions on the forums and mostly on Facebook and whatnot. And I've sort of developed a little network of people that I can go to for other stuff. But I just this is a vibrant community. It's an active community. I really like, the responses I get. I'm just like, hey, there's got to be a better way of engaging the X-Carve community, or just the, a CNC kind of newbies out there, so we can learn from one another. We're not in competition per se by any means of the imagination, really, in my opinions. But I just felt like there is an opportunity to engage and to bring people together, either on a topic basis or on a just sort of open Q&A basis. And I'll talk about sort of future things and ask for a vote or a head count on that a little bit later. But I just thought I would love to learn more. There's phenomenal knowledge out there. There's a lot of great people in this community. And I just thought there was a way for us to get together from time to time, once a month, every couple of weeks, just to learn and provide feedback to one another, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, right now everybody's on mute. What I thought would work best is if you have a question and you have a microphone, just type in your question and or say, hey, can you unmute me for a second? And I'll just unmute you. If I try to unmute everybody, there'll just be a ton of background noise and nobody will be able to hear a damn thing. So everybody stays sort of muted on purpose. And then I'm happy to unmute people to ask a question or to respond to a question. So the topic today is going to be, something that I'm wondering about too, is kind of workflow software. Like, how do people sort of approach, how do people approach working with the X-Carve from sort of a newbie perspective, or, how do I move from a newbie and what do I need to be thinking about if I want to go to intermediary or advanced? And so I polled a bunch of people last time back in December. This is a topic that people wanted to hear about. And then I blasted some messages out, and it's like, hey, who out there besides me, because I don't want to deal with it, or I don't know enough to deal with it, is who can just kind of part some information to us all. So, and we'll talk, I'll introduce Luke here in a couple minutes, but I'm pretty agnostic, from I'm not playing favorites or like Luke or anybody else, just sort of like, let's get some information out there and let's collaborate, and then let's open it up for Q&A as we kind of go through here. So let me go to the next slide. One of my favorite sayings is "No good deed goes unpunished." So as we're trying to talk through or answer questions, and there's probably many right answers to a particular question or a particular problem or a particular solution. That's fine if you have other opinions or you choose like, hey, this what works for me. That's great. But, I don't want to get into a point where like, well, that's completely wrong and this is the way you should do it. And, unless it's really, really wrong, it's usually, like I said, there's multiple ways to handle something. So I'm happy to facilitate the community. I'm happy to use my buddies lent me this webinar for free, which is awesome. But what I don't want to do is trolled. Because I'm like, I don't have the time or patience or energy for being trolled. If people want to troll me, then they can go to, I'll just send them this link to edibleanus.com, and they can, pick and choose what they want from there. So, but like I said before, no good deed goes unpunished. And, I just wanted to kind of get that up there that, it's all good. So, anyhow, the topic that we're going to hit today, and then we're going to open it up for just general Q&A for any topic, was, and this was from a discussion with a smaller group than this back in December, which was, basically software workflow, like how do people go about, planning their carves, or, what should they be thinking about planning their carves. And Luke Wilson, who's, again, from a, he's a vendor, but he's also knowledgeable pretty heavily on the X-Carve environment and other topics. If people want to like, hey, I want to present this topic and the community wants to hear about it, all the power to us. I'll assemble and put that together. But, Luke stepped forward. It's like, hey, I'll do a short presentation on options and workflow and sort of open that up to everybody, especially a lot of newbies out there. So I'm going to flip it over to him. Before I do that, in terms of, and I said raffle in my invite, I apologize. It's a giveaway for the Triquarta. I always want to say Triquarta, but Triquarta. Charlie is offered up one of these, and what I did was there was about 50 people who registered for the webinar, so I labeled everybody 1 through 50, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a random number generator, which I'll show on my screen, and have it pick a number between 1 and 50, and then if that person is on, then I'll just hook them up with Charlie, and you guys can get your tricorder over there. If the person's not on, I'll just pick another random number, or the system, that Google will pick another random number until we find somebody who's actually on the webinar, and that person will win the tricorder. So, which that fucking thing is awesome. So that's a great giveaway, and I appreciate Charlie for throwing that out there. So good. I'm going to pass the screen on to Luke here. And Luke, your screen now is what we all see.
Sweet. So thanks, Paul. As Paul said, I'm Luke. I'm going to talk a little bit about CNC software. I can only tell you what I know. I don't know everything, but I think there's an opportunity for especially new people to get a little bit wider understanding of what options are out there and what makes sense. So a little bit about me. First of all, I have an industrial engineering degree from the University of Louisville. Professionally, I'm a business analyst for now. I'm getting fairly close to quitting my job and doing the small business thing full time. I'm a small business owner. I run TBD CNC, where I sell, make and sell upgrades for X-Carve machines. And I've got two X-Carves. I've got a 750 and a 1,000 millimeter. And then I've got a fully custom 4-foot by 8-foot machine that I designed and built myself. This is what I do all the time. And I think the software is a really important part of this, because something that might take you an hour in easel in a different software might take you 5 minutes, 20 minutes, and that time savings is massive. So, most hobbyists will start with a cradle to grave software solution, something like easel or Carbide Create, and I think that's great. I think that's where everybody should start. The problem is these softwares are pretty limiting. There's a lot of stuff that should be easy and isn't, or just there's a lot of meat left on the bone. So in the CNC world, there's literally hundreds of software options. We'll talk about maybe 5 or 6 today, but there is an unlimited number of options. So if you're not happy with what you're using, don't settle for it. There's always something else out there to try out. And efficiency and capability, those are keys to us being able to pay back the cost of our machines and make money doing this. If we can design our stuff quicker, get the software part done quicker,
Got it?
running and make, make money, pay off our machine, etc. So a couple things that you're going to hear a lot about when you do research on software is how many Ds, right? So 2.5D is essentially X and Y. I think of it like if you're familiar with industrial equipment, like a laser cutter or a plasma cutter, the torch is either on or off, and the X and Y position is essentially what determines the cut. 2.5D is more like what most stuff that you're going to do in easel is, especially if you're not using easel Pro. So 2.5D, you're going to position X and Y, and then you're going to move the Z up and down. When you get into 3D is when you're moving X, Y, and Z at the same time. So different softwares have different capabilities. 3D is obviously for most stuff where you want to be, but for a lot of stuff you can get away with 2.5D. There's been some confusion around the basic workflow, especially with people that are brand new to this. So this is kind of, this is the workflow that no matter what software you're using and whether you realize it or not, this is what's happening. So you're going to start with design and modeling. So somewhere you're either going to get a design or you're going to do the design yourself. If you're doing like Fusion 360 or something, it's usually called modeling, but basically you got to get the design of what you're going to carve, right? And then you do toolpath creation, which is where you take that design and you essentially interpret it for the machine. So the machine has no idea. You have to tell it how to make that thing that you designed, right? So toolpath creation is where you take this thing that you designed and turn it into steps that the machine can follow to make it. So once you have your toolpath creation done, that's when you're going to generate your G code. And this is where the post-processing happens. So post-processing is every machine, every different type of machine is a little bit different and might require a little bit different steps. For example, if you're lucky enough to have a machine that has a tool changer, you're going to have certain steps that happen to make those tool changes take place. What the post-processor does is takes your tool paths, turns them into G code, and includes those special steps for your particular machine. So X-Carves are fairly simple. Most of what we do, the post-processing, is simple, and it's always automatic. But some machines have really complex post-processors because they've got a lot of things they need to add into that G code. And then once you have the G code, the final step is to send that G code to the machine. which is what you're going to use a software called a sender for. This chart here kind of shows across the top, it shows the different steps that we just talked about. And then down the side, it shows kind of the different difficulties. So the softwares in green there, Easel and Carbide Create, those are your do-it-all softwares. They're designed for beginners, and they cover every step of the process. As you get more intermediate and further along in your journey, you're going to look at other softwares. These softwares generally aren't going to do everything. They're going to take certain steps of this process, and you're going to use multiple softwares together to get everything that you need done. So the intermediate softwares for design, you use V-Carve, you can use Inkscape, you can use Illustrator. Really, there's any number of softwares that you can use if you're starting from scratch to do your design. I would say a large portion of beginners they're doing very light design. They're taking an existing file and adding text to it or something along those lines. Easel and Carbide Create are great for that. But when you get into doing something that's really, really special and really unique, you need something that's a little bit more capable. That's where V-Carve, Inkscape, which is a great free vector graphic software, Illustrator, things like that come into play. V-Carve will also generate, or you can also do your tool pathing in V-Carve. Post-processing G-code generation can all be done in V-Carve. Then you get to the senders down here. So a few different options: V-Transfer, Universal G-code sender, CNC.js. Universal G-code sender is probably the most popular. It does a pretty good job. I personally use CNC.js. We'll get into why in a second. But your workflow, generally speaking, is going to be to work left to right in this chart. So you're going to start in something like V-Carve, which is my recommendation. And then once you have your G-code generated out of V-Carve, you're going to move into a sender like V-Transfer, UGS, or CNC.js. You can even use Easel. I mean, you can go from V-Carve to Easel to send that G-code to your machine and make it actually make what you want. When you get down to the bottom here, you get into what I call the expert softwares, Aspire and Fusion 360. So Fusion 360 is free for hobbyists and startups, and they define startups as anybody that makes less than $100,000 a year for their business. So say the vast majority of us count as a startup, we're going to get Fusion 360 for free. Aspire, on the other hand, is very expensive. I think it's around $2,000. So Aspire is listed as expert because of the cost. Fusion 360 is listed as expert because it's pretty hard to get into. It's not a super approachable software. So if you don't have 3D modeling experience, it's going to be tough to get into Fusion 360. There is a great online community. There's lots of resources that you can use to get up to speed. And if you've got the drive, Fusion 360 is an absolutely amazing place to be. But it is very difficult to use, and the learning curve is extremely steep on that. I mean, I have an engineering degree. I took engineering design classes in college, and I very rarely use Fusion 360 just because I can do it easier in other places. So, but if you have the need to do very, very complex, very specific things, you're going to find that Aspire and Fusion 360 are where you're going to land. So personally, I started with Inkscape and Easel. I've been using Inkscape for years. I started using Easel when I got my first X-Carve. I think that everybody needs to start in Easel. It is an amazing software for getting you up to speed with how to use a CNC machine, how to generate basic tool paths, things like that. Easel is not the place to stay, but it is absolutely the place to start. Once I started getting into more complex stuff or for various reasons, I upgraded to V-Carve Desktop, which is $350. I started using Universal G-Code Sender, which is great. I've got no complaints. I ended up switching over to CNC.js. I bought a dedicated server for my X-Carve, which allows me basically to not have to plug in my computer to my machine. I have a server plugged in the machine, and I can operate it from anywhere on my network, which it's not critical. It's kind of a unnecessary thing, but for me, it's really nice to have because I don't like to have to be tethered to my machine. I've got other stuff going on. So this server allows me to move around and do what I need to do. So CNC.js just replaces Universal G-Code Sender. Everything still comes out of V-Carve Desktop. Now, V-Carve Desktop does have a size limitation. So when I built my big CNC machine, I had to upgrade to V-Carve Pro. That's another I think it's $349 actually, but it's a nice thing about Vectric. They let you, when you go to upgrade, you only pay the difference. So if you buy a Vectric software, you're pretty much good to go in the future. If you decide you need something a little bit more complex, you can just pay the difference and upgrade. And then I do use Fusion 360, especially for cutting metal. Fusion 360 has some tool paths that are specifically designed for cutting metal that V-Carve just doesn't have. And V-Carve's designed for wood. If you really want to get into doing a lot of cutting metal, you're going to have to land at Fusion 360, or you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices as far as speed and things like that go. So from here, I'm going to do a little demonstration in V-Carve. This is a sign that I built for my shop. It's a floating letter sign. It's actually a really, really easy thing to do, and people absolutely love it. So it's a great opportunity for if somebody in your family owns a business or something, making a sign like this for them is very easy to do. It's very impactful, and people love it. So I'm going to switch over to V-Carve here. This is just straight from the opening here. I'm going to create a new file. Single-sided. It's going to ask me for my job size. So I'm going to set that to, most of my work's done on a 750 millimeter X-Carve. So I'm going to set my width and height to 21 inches. My material is going to be Baltic birch, 3/4, which it actually measures to 0.72. So I put that in here. I'm going to zero off the machine or the material surface. This machine bed zeroing, don't underestimate this. This is really, really useful, especially if you don't want to wreck your spoil board, and if you don't have features on top of your material that are super critical in the depth. You can zero off your machine bed, and then the machine, if you measured your material slightly wrong or something along those lines, the machine knows right where that machine bed is, and you're not going to cut into it. So, but for this, we're going to say material surface because I'm taking up the entire bed of the machine anyway. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to draw the circle. So I hit the circle tool over here. I'm going to say 20-inch diameter, and I'm going to put it right in the middle. Then I'm going to go import vectors. I'm going to import my logo. So it brings it in real big. I'm going to resize it. And the point of this is not necessarily to teach you exactly how to do all these steps, but more to show you the basic workflow. So I'll move through it kind of quickly. So I've got the logo here. This is what the sign is going to look like when it's done. The way that you make the letters float is with wooden dowel pins. So I'm going to use 1/2-inch dowels for most of it. So I put in my diameter of 1/2 inch here. Then I'm just going to start dropping supports in. And I'm just trying to put enough that the letters will be supported. Once we get down here, whoops, let's get rid of that. The 1/2-inch dowel pins are, man, the 1/2" dowel pins are a little bit too big for these letters. So we're going to use 1/4 inch from here. Get rid of that. And just drop a few in to, like I said, support the letters. And then we've got this middle bar here. I'll put one in the middle. All right, so there's the sign with the letters and the placement of all the dowels. So now I'm going to copy this. Just Control C, Control V. I'm going to move it over here. And then I'm going to mirror it horizontally. So we're going to cut these letters upside down so that we can cut the pockets in the back of them for the wooden dowels. Over here, so this is where I'm going to cut the back plate, which is the wood colored part there. So I don't need the letters over here. I'm going to get rid of those. This step isn't really necessary, but it makes everything a little bit more clear. All right, so now I'm going to start generating my tool paths. The first thing, we're going to cut this in 2 steps. So the first step is going to be cutting the back plate with all these holes. And then the second step is going to be cutting off letters. So the first operation that we're going to do is to pocket all these holes for the dowel pins. So I'm going to use a pocket tool path. We're going to use 1-inch dowels. So we want about half of it to be in each side, and then we want a little bit of space to give that floating effect. So that's where we get our cut depth of 0.45. So that leaves 1/10 of an inch between the letter and the backing board. I'm going to select my tool. I could probably use a 1/4 inch tool here, but with the 1/4 inch dowels, I prefer to use an 1/8 inch tool. This is in V-Carve, you set up your tools in here. I don't set this each time. I just kind of have it set, from the start. Let's see. Calculate. So there's my pockets. I can preview that. Come back over here. The second thing we're going to do is cut out the outside. Again, this is on the first workpiece. So our cut depth, we're going to set to the depth of the material, which is 0.72. We're going to use that 1/8 inch bit again. We're going to add tabs, and you can place those manually. So I'll just put a couple around here. Calculate that. Preview it. So that's cutting out our piece. We've got all our dowel pins placed. We're good to go on the first workpiece. So conveniently, these are pocket 1, profile 1, first workpiece. So that's kind of how we'll manage it. Then there's not really a good way to have multiple sheets in V-Carve. So I kind of just put it off to the side. And then for the second set of tool paths, I'll drag it over to where I want it. And then if you recalculate, it pulls them off. You're good to go on this one. So same thing here. We're going to highlight just our pinholes. Do a pocket, same depth, same tool, good to go. Calculate that. We'll go ahead and reset our preview. Get rid of these two. Preview that. So there's our pins in the back of the letters. And then we're going to cut out the letters themselves. Again, profile toolpath, because we're going to cut the outside. Full cut depth of the material. We're going to use the same tool so we don't have to deal with tool changes. We're going to add tabs. We're going to place them manually. I'm going to make sure I place these in places where I can easily clean them up. So I like to use a router with either a roundover bit or a flush trim bit to clean up my tabs. So I want to make sure I put them places where I can get to them. I'm just going to drop them in here. And then we're going to calculate this. And we can preview that. And there's our second set of toolpaths. So I'm gonna save the second set first. So I select the toolpath that I want to save, hit my save toolpath. The post processor is for the X-Carve. Save toolpaths. I'm gonna call this sign letters. Save that. And I'm gonna move this back. I'm going to recalculate all. There's my toolpaths back there. Get rid of these because I don't want to cut those. Just want these. Save toolpaths. Sign. Backing. Saved. And now I'm ready to move into a sender. So you can see that this type of sign is just, it's really easy to do. The effect again is great. It looks really nice, and you can pull them off really quickly. So it's a great opportunity if you can reach out to businesses, etc. Easy project, especially in V-Carve, and nice payout. So that's all I've got planned. From here we can move into questions and address some specific stuff. So I'll pass it back to Paul.
Great. Let me go back here. Sharing. So, and just as a couple things, there's lots of different ways to get to, even what Luke presented with V-Carve real quick. There's different ways of getting to that. Even with easel, you could do something similar to that. It just we're not knocking easel, and Luke mentioned a few times, we're not knocking anything. It's just I always, and when I first went into my experience, I making very simple cuts with easel, designing, cutting, it's super easy because you're sort of one software package, or it's cloud-based, but you sort of front to end, you stay in one environment, and it's not overly complicated to kind of try to figure how it works. But as I asked lots of questions, what are you using? What are you using? Or I saw some phenomenal looking design that somebody did. I'm like, what did you use to design that? So, and very often it was one of the Vectric packages. It was V-Carve or Aspire, and of course then I got to figure out what the difference between V-Carve and Aspire is, and the 3D and the price and all this other stuff. But I made the leap into V-Carve myself, and short learning curve. Lots of video content out there, very active community, great Facebook pages for it too. And, now I use that as my creation tool. And personally, I actually still use easel for my sender. So because I work on I do most of my design work on a different PC than the PC I have that's running my machine. So, and if you remember what Luke talked about, he bought a server license for CNC.js. That's how his workflow works. So I like the design on my more powerful PC, and then I like to just upload that right up into easel. Today, I at some point I might move away from it, but it works great for me today. I use it as just a sender, and then when I'm ready to run, I run downstairs, turn it on, hit the go button. Oversimplifying it, but that has worked out really well for me. So again, different paths, but I do very much agree that once you get past that very basic design, and you're going to want to be looking at different packages than what Easel can provide. And again, no knock to Easel or Easel Pro or any of the Inventable folks on here. It's really designed differently. So anyhow, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. What I want to do now is open it up for some Q&A, and then we will go to do the giveaway. So Kelly Hickel has several questions. I'll start with her because she's kind of popped in there. So Kelly, if you have a microphone, I'm going to try to unmute you here, and let me find you first. Kelly?
Hi, this is Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
Not a girl.
Oh, sorry. I'm an
I've never gotten that before, have you, Kelly?
Never in my entire life.
Sorry, I apologize for that. So, but anyhow, Kelly, you have the microphone. So, and then, by the way,
okay.
If people have an answer to it, it's not just Luke and I. Like just throw, hey, I'd like to answer that one, and I'll unmute the person who wants to answer it, and we just sort of go by that. So.
Hey, Luke. First, I wanted to thank you. I knew I recognized the name. I just calibrated my X-axis after going to the 9mm belts and putting the risers and stiffeners on my machine this week. So can't wait to get back down there and do the Y. So looks nice. I was looking for a dust shoe that I wanted to build, and I got captivated by this video at the Vectric site of a guy named Eric, who's a partner in designing one. And it took me a while to hunt down and figure out what he's using. He's using Mach 3. He's got an auto zero after tool change thing going on that I now lust after. There's an Instructables that talks about doing this with a Shipoko that he says he thinks should work on an X-Carve. I just found it, and I haven't really looked into it yet. I was thinking of just writing. I mean, I can write software to do it. That's what I do. But I was looking for, you don't want to have to quit your sender and go to something else and then come back, right? You want to somehow, when it gets to a tool change, have it run some macro or script that you wrote to do this. And I just wondered if you had run across any of the senders that allowed for this sort of thing, or had a built-in tool change. But
yeah, so in order to do an automatic tool change, you're going to have to have a tool changer, which is
that's not what this is doing.
It's a piece of equipment, right? So you're going to have a manual step no matter what.
Right.
So one option is really just to use Charlie's Triquetra zero plate, or if it's just for a tool change, even the Inventables zero plate or any zero plate. You could, I want to say, if you really wanted to get crazy with it, you could buy a Triquetra Z plate, and you could mount it in your machine, and then in Universal G-Code Sender or CNCJS, and I'm sure lots of other senders, but I know UGS and CNCJS, you can write macros. So you could write a macro that sent the machine to be over that mounted Z-axis plate and zeroed down to it. I don't know. So I know Mach 3 it has a lot of functionalities that you can't get in Gerbil, which is what the X controller runs off. So you might run into some trouble with, if you zero the tool to this mounted zero plate, it might lose where the material top is. So if you were going to do
that's the trick, right? I mean,
yeah. So if you ran, if you did your design and your toolpaths in a software that let you run off of the machine bed, so then you have a fixed point. The machine bed's always the machine bed, no matter how thick your material is. Then you could mount a zero plate. You could write a macro that sent it over the zero plate, probed. You have to make sure that you clipped to the spindle, another manual step, but you could probe to that and then set your offset to the known distance to the machine bed, and as long as your code's written off the machine bed, you'd be good to go.
Yeah, so I mean, I did this all manually when building a Dodge Viper Pinewood Derby car for my son 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's painful.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I loved about this was he had two touch plates that were identical. One was screwed down to his bed, as you say. The other one he placed on top of the material. He zeroed it, and when he got to the tool change part, the thing moved over. He changed the bit. He pushed a button. It came down to the mounted one to get the new height, and I believe it just reset the work zero based on the difference between the old bit height and the new bit, or not bit height, but like bit, the amount it extends from the collar.
Yeah.
And it just adjusted the work zero setting by that amount. And then, so it came over, locked the motors, you did change by hand, pushed a button, and off you go. And that's now my new holy grail for doing this. And
So,
I write software, I can do anything. I just don't want to write a whole G-code sender.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that if you do your tool pathing off of the machine bed, you'll be able to pull that off. I don't know if you do it off the material height, it might get a little bit more difficult because I don't know if Gerbil, as far as I know at least, in Gerbil you can't like save the current height to then reference it in the next line of code. Once you reset the height, it forgot what the last one was.
Right. That's why you have to have a programming language out that you can send Gerbil commands from. You have to have a scripting, not just a macro.
Yeah. If you had something that laid on top that could see where the machine was and that you could also send Gerbil commands from, you could definitely pull that off.
Yeah. So that's why I'm looking for a sender that has a non-G-code scripting language. That's the deal, right? So if you get that, so it can interrogate, okay, well, the old work zero was this. I'm going to send you down. Okay, now where are you? All right, well, the old work zero, the old tool offset, blah, blah. Okay, set it.
Charlie might be able to help you with this. I don't know. I know he's got some really nice tools in his like Triquetra toolbox. He might have your answer, and he's a great guy. If you reach out to him, I'm sure that he'll have the time to help you out. He probably knows more than I do about.
Yeah. Okay. I was planning to talk to him, but since my machine's not running right now, it's been down for 3 weeks. So, that I sort of figured I had to get it working again before I could have a reasonable conversation about it.
Yeah, and if you can pull it off, get on board with Charlie and add it to the toolbox, because that'd be a great thing for everybody, I think.
Yeah, it makes that so much less effort than what I was doing. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Are you there, Paul?
Sorry. So yeah, Ethan's up next. Got some questions. As I was just saying, if other people have answers to questions, just like, hey, I want to answer that one, and I'll unmute you. So, Ethan, you're on the line.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Luke. I've been using Easel now for probably about 2 years, and over the past few months, I got access to their app development section.
Ooh.
And I'm an avid programmer. I enjoy doing it, so I started to write some of the apps for it. And I guess one of my questions is, what does the community want to see in terms of that? So I've gotten about 4 apps submitted so far and released. Ones for generating tones or generating slopes, exploding shape paths into their subpaths, changing the depths on shapes. I've got a texture generator that should be released sometime in the next week. But outside of that, what do other people want to see in terms of apps? What would make the software better to use?
Yeah, so first of all, that's awesome. Things like the apps in Easel are, they're just great for making this even more accessible for people. I know I pulled it up here. I'm looking. Admittedly haven't looked at the apps in Easel in a while, but
yeah, they haven't changed much for quite a while. So
yeah, one thing that personally would be just awesome is like V-bit inlays. So where you cut the inlay piece and the pocket for the inlay with a V-bit, so that if there's slight variations in the size, you just glue it down and then you sand it down or plane it and you get just a perfect inlay. Something like that in Easel would just be amazing.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to take a look into that one.
And I think also too, Ethan, I don't know if you're active on Facebook, but there's and then there's the forums, obviously, on Inventables. I kind of go back and forth between the forums and Facebook. I use the forums on Inventables to sort of search because there's just tons and tons of content there, and I use sort of the Facebook stuff for if I have a question or just want to show something or interact, that sort of thing. I just find it easier to do. But where I'm going with that is, get out there on the X-Carve community and just like, hey, what do you guys want to see, and ask those same questions. I know on the Facebook page it's a pretty active community, so you're gonna get a lot of feedback pretty damn quick. So, which is pretty cool. So, but and or just set up link people to a survey monkey, like one of those free survey monkeys, and just sort of drive them there. That's just some thoughts on how to sort of gather some feedback on where to go with this thing. But that's fucking awesome that you're developing it. And I have used those apps, and they're very cool. And I wish and like you, I noticed that they weren't doing anything with them for months and months and months. So, so if you got some stuff launching, that's pretty cool. So.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why there's not as many developers on there is it's not the greatest documentation of how to use their APIs. So it's just a little tough to figure it out, but kind of once you do, then it starts to make sense. But it's just that initial learning curve and getting through that.
Yeah, while we're talking here, I'm playing with the Depth Changer app. And I'm going to add you to the list of my heroes, Ethan. This is awesome.
I try.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Yeah, I get out there and I throw that out there on Facebook, and then maybe even do like an online. I'm happy to participate. So cool.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see here. We've got. Several more questions. Let's see if we get Todd. Todd, do you have a microphone?
I do.
Okay, you're live.
Excellent, thank you. So, Luke, you kind of showed the tools in VCarve a moment ago when you're going through. How large is the tool database when you get VCarve? And I'll ask all questions up front because it's actually kind of multifold. How large is the database that they have, and can it be exported from your database? And does it make sense to share like somebody's full tool path in the community so that we can just download and re-import it and have a larger community tool set?
Yeah, so straight out of the box, it's got most of the tools that you're going to use as far as end mills and VPITs go. I mean, and really that's like 5 tools, right? I mean, 60 degree, 90 degree, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch. So you can export. I've never done it, but I can see the option here. You can export and import. I know personally I like to play with the pass depth and the step over per tool to tune it into my machine. So I do think that it would be awesome to get, and there might be some, I mean, VCarve's got a ton of users for all kinds of machines. There might be something out there, but to get a larger tool database, I know there might have to be a couple different levels of it, right? Because depending on how far you've gone with your machine, you're going to have a lot of different capabilities. I run pretty aggressively. I actually just sent a file to somebody for them to cut, and they were like, "Man, I'm breaking bits. This is so." Yes, I think it would be great. I do think that you're still going to have to go in there and kind of tune it to your exact settings. I will say it's very easy to add tools. So I'm pretty happy with the tool database.
Yeah, and actually, that's a great question. So I use a lot of Amana bits, which I buy at toolstoday.com, and I use that, and I use Drillman one on eBay.
Yeah, I think that's where I got most of my bits recently.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I like Tools Today and Amana bits is, there's a shitload of options up there. So, 60 degrees, there's boom, 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 there's, 15 different options there, and it can be overwhelming, but they give you the specs right there. I don't like to sit there and try to measure all this other shit. And then also, they're on Amana, the actual Amana website, you can download just for VCarve almost all of their bits, and you can import that right into VCarve. So, and I've done that a couple times because they update them. I keep it as a separate pocket, so I just drag down the bits that I actually have, but it's all their specs. They're they're really aggressive with their defaults, so I have to usually ratchet those backs, but the descriptions are in there, the sizes, like everything's there. I don't have to dick around with it. You just download, import the database, and then, like I said, you just sort of drag the bits in that you have or that you want to have into your further down in your tool database is what I do. So, and that's one of the reasons why I like Tools Today and the Amana bits in general, because it kind of lays it all out for you. Where some of the stuff I buy, Drillman's pretty good with providing the specs too, but there's some other places like, what the hell did I just get? Right. I bought some other bits. I'm like, what the hell is this? So, now I don't want to be screwing around guessing or measuring shit. I'm too green for that. So, anyhow, I just add 2 cents onto what Luke said there. So,
okay,
yeah,
thank you.
And another thing, kind of tangential, get expensive bits and cheap bits. When you're doing something that's a little bit squirrely, use your cheap bits. I love my Amana bits. I use them all the time, but I also buy 10 packs of 1/8 inch bits from Amazon for $10. And when I'm doing something I'm not sure about, I use those so I can break the cheap stuff instead of the expensive stuff.
Yeah, I've got this 15 degree engraving bit that I buy from Drillman. When I buy them, they're cheap. They're like $4 or $5 a bit. So, and they do phenomenal. They're an 1/8 inch call it bit, but I love that bit for my engraving and lettering now, because it's just super precise, looks really sharp. Nothing significantly large, but they're cheap. So, and I'll buy them several at a time. I haven't broken one yet, but I buy them several at a time because I know they'll wear out at some point. So, anything else, Todd?
No, thanks.
All right, thanks. We'll get a couple more questions in, and then I'll do the giveaway, and then we'll do the we'll keep going for Q&A. Richard Cisco has a question. Let me read it out because he doesn't have a microphone. This question was mentioned that you needed to switch from VCarve Desktop to VCarve Pro because there was a size limitation. What is that factor? Would it make upgrading from Pro to Aspire? So there's a couple different questions Richard have here, but VCarve Desktop will allow you to go to 25 inches, so it's 25 by 25. VCarve Pro, it's correct me if I'm wrong here, basically unlimited size. So it doesn't.
As far as I know, I haven't hit it yet. So
yeah. So that's the difference between, and that's the only difference I believe between Pro and Desktop is 25 by 25, and VCarve Pro. Oh, there's gadgets in there. So yeah, gadgets. Pro supports gadgets. So you're right. Kelly brought that out. So desktop
and gadgets are awesome, but they're not required. So VCarve Desktop is still great. And for if you've got the 1,000mm X-Carve and you need more than 25, maybe you can justify Pro and get the gadgets that are great. But Desktop's going to be what most X-Carve users stop at.
Yeah, and I'm using Desktop myself, and there'll be at some point where I'll need to go Pro, but that's really when I probably take my, what do they call it, the Franken X-Carve or the X, when I need to, when I really seriously retool my X-Carve or build do it yourself, CNC at some point in the future. Then that'll be the catalyst for me to probably move to the Pro version. So, and then from Pro to Aspire, I know Aspire handles 3D very differently or better. And Luke mentioned I think it's $1,800 or $2,000. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot more to it than just 3D creation, but when I looked at all the videos and did the comparison, I'm like, I don't need Aspire for what I do right now. So, yeah,
and I'm in the same boat. Especially, I don't do a lot of 3D, so it's really hard for me to imagine a time where I would go to Aspire. I really don't know what that jump looks like. I mean, you're talking about a software package that costs as much as your machine. That's a really tough sell for me. So
people that use it though just love it. I mean, the interfaces are all very similar, which is what I just looking at the videos. But I think you hit it right. I don't know if expert or really super serious users, but people gaga over Aspire that are at that level where they can use it and afford it. So, but Kelly just wrote a message, Google Vectric product comparison, and on their Vectric site, it's all the check marks and what each one will do, and then there's videos that will show you what the differences are too. So, what are they got questions here? So Keith Greason does not have a microphone, but his question is, how do you know what software works with what software? So to get the final product to your machine. So and I maybe I'll rephrase that question a little bit differently. Is like what works with what? Does VCarve work with UGS and Pixender and what does VCarve work with, or what can you import into easel? And that's a great that's a great question. So so far I haven't found. I asked my path to getting to that where I'm at today, and I'm sure a year from now I'll be at a different place. But I just asked a ton of questions like, what are you using? How does that work? And then I put on my little notepad to watch videos and look at, Google the stuff here. But I mean, it seems like the X-Carve community, I know there's probably more than what Luke presented, but it's easel, it's VCarve, it's Aspire, it's it's that. And Luke, I'm gonna probably, if you won't mind going back to that. Actually, I have it right here. So
I was going to say.
go back to that page here. These are, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think these are the main core packages for VCarve out there.
Yeah. There are a million other options.
X-Carve, I'm sorry, not VCarve, for X-Carve.
Yeah.
So.
There's a million other options, but this is what 99% of people in the X-Carve community at least use.
Yeah. So.
And personally, I haven't found any software that doesn't work with another software. So as far as I know, all of these softwares start and stop at industry standard files. So, Inkscape, for example, and I assume Illustrator also, obviously, but ends at like an SVG file. VCarve can accept an SVG file. Easel, you can import an SVG file. So, as far as I know, all of the softwares that we've talked about at least start and stop at standard file types, and you won't have any issues with compatibility. Now, there are like in Inkscape, if you create a design with text, the text doesn't like to import into easel. So I just take the fill tool and fill over the text to convert it into vectors and then import it into easel. But I don't think you're going to find any like major compatibility issues. For the most part, you can pick anything on here and make it work with anything else on here.
Yeah, and God knows what people are developing out there. So, and I don't want to keep people too long, but I do wanted to. We're about almost an hour in. Do the giveaway, not the raffle, for the Triquarta. Triquarta. I was trying to put the R in there. So, what I did put in there was you needed to be here for it. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and I think everybody can see an Excel spreadsheet. I should be able to see an Excel spreadsheet, right? Can you see that, Luke?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So I hid everybody's email address because that's not anybody's info. So I labeled everybody 1 through 50 for the people that registered. I know we only have like 28 or 29 on. So I'm going to go to Google's, where is this random number generator here? That should be up on your screen. And I'm just going to hit generate. It's going to pick a number. I'm going to see if that person's online. And if it is, I'll connect them with Charlie and you guys can, get that freaking awesome tricorda. So
Sure.
All right. So I hit one. Sorry. Chuck
There you
Bowers.
go. Right?
Isn't that funny? Freaking one. Is Chuck actually on? Let's
Uh-huh.
see. Did I see Chuck in here? Unless he goes by Charlie or something. I don't see Chuck in the group people right now. So sorry, Chuck, you aren't here. So too bad, so sad. Let's go pick another number. $47, which is Rick Skinner. Is Rick on here? I'm not going to dick around with this too much, but we're going to give this thing away. Nope, Skinner's not here. Go back here. Hopefully we'll have a winner. 28. John Pimtel. Jesus Christ.
I think you're low. 28's Wayne Hall.
Oh, 28 Wayne Hall. Okay, sorry. Yeah, Wayne's on. Yeah, Wayne's here. Wayne wins.
There you
Wayne,
go.
Wayne, are you on the mic?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you win, bud.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Hey, free is my second four-letter word that begins with an F, so hopefully it's yours too.
Sounds good.
All right, I'll send, if you're okay with that, I'll send Charlie your email address, and then he'll connect with you on the freebie. So.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right, man. Enjoy.
Congrats.
Do you have one of these? But I'm assuming you don't have one.
Yes, I do have one.
Oh, you do have one. All right. Well, you can talk to Charlie then. So.
Well, maybe I can donate somewhere where somebody needs it.
Oh, there you go. Well, all right.
There you go.
All right. All right. Well, congratulations. And yeah, it was like several people just raised their hands like, I need one. I need one. So, all right.
No, thank you.
All right, man. Thanks, man. All right. So I'll hook Wayne up with Charlie. That'll be good. There's several other people that want to give things away. I think next webinar. Before I open it back up again for Q&A, I did set up a poll. And the poll question should come up. I just put some things in here for like, what other topics do people want to have a webinar about? So if you can look at your polls box on your little thing there, people can vote what they want, and then we'll, it's not like it's going to be one or the other. It's just sort of like, what's the next topic that people want to talk about, and then we'll sort of go from top to bottom on here. So about half of you guys have voted. Let's get a couple more on here, and then looks like feeds and speeds and running your business. No, actually, suppliers, bits, materials. That'll be a good one because I still want to know what people are using out there. Yeah, bits, materials. Like I know a lot of people that buy their wood online. So, I'm always looking for a good supplier, or like, I've dabbled around talking to sawmills up in the area. So, they don't know what to make of me, but yeah, it looks like suppliers, bits, materials. Maybe we'll combine that with, feeds and speeds. I think path to running your own business is a phenomenal topic that I want to get to myself, but I think that's like a whole session, there's so many different paths on that, but I think that's a whole session by itself personally. So why don't we think about feeds and speeds and suppliers for the next one, and then the one after that we'll line up. I'll gather information from a bunch of different people, like what they've done to sort of take their X-Carve and monetize it. And then, that one's going to be a really open mic night for that one, because like I said, there's tons of stuff. Personally, I've had this myself for a year, and I am 90% of the way paying off. Paying for itself. So about 90% there of recovering my investment, which I don't consider too bad, and I'm a hack. So, yeah, definitely I want to hear about what other people are doing and share that experience with folks. So suppliers and feeds and speeds next, and then we'll go to running your business. We'll lead open to any other Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up. If anyone else has any questions, they want to throw it out there, just type it into the question box. Oh, look, I think this is kind of a business question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why you went with LLC. I think that's just a limited liability, so you have some protection for yourself. That's why most people go. It's like the easiest path to creating your own business is an LLC, I believe. So, and it gives you a little
Yeah.
bit of
So
protection out there from your personal self to your business self, right?
yes, it's also very easy from a tax perspective. So, you know, I've been working on my taxes lately, and having an LLC, it's 100% pass through. So all the income and all the expenses you report essentially on your personal taxes, which it can be really, really nice, especially I think for a lot of X-Carve users, they're not looking necessarily to make a ton of money. They're just looking to make enough money to buy the next upgrade or the next software package or whatever that is. So all those are expenses. So you can, at least for a little while, you can, for a couple of years, you can run with no profit as an LLC, and you can expense things like your workshop. So in my case, my entire basement is my shop. That's about half of my house. Half of my house payment gets expensed on my taxes. So there's some huge benefits to being registered as a business. Obviously, you want to make sure that you do everything legally. You want to make sure you keep all your records. But yeah, registering as a business and you know, reporting all your income, charging sales tax, all that, it can really pay off in the long run, especially if you don't turn a lot of profit.
That's a great question. A great answer too. So, and then Steve asked another question, like what kind of liabilities would you have as a CNC company or as a CNC company? I don't know. You know, people.
So
I always think of the weird case scenario where. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, anytime you put your name out there, there's always somebody that's willing to sue you. So no matter what you're doing, there's always some amount of liability. Now, granted, with a CNC business in your own house or something where you don't have customers coming by, there's a lot less liability. But let's say you do have a customer come over to pick up something that they bought from you and they trip over a cord in your shop. That's an example of something that you could potentially be liable for. And as a business or as an LLC especially, you can really isolate yourself from that, where they can come for everything the business owns, but you know, they can have the machine and not your retirement.
Yeah, I always think of like you know, some nut job out there where you're like doing like a wedding gift or something, or you know, and you don't deliver it on time, and you ruin the wedding, and they're going to sue you. You know, blah blah blah. Like,
yeah, we live in a culture where you can never be too safe, and I don't think that avoiding liability is the only reason to set up an LLC, but it's a nice benefit.
Yep. And then Ron asked a question about starting at 9. Why 9 p.m. Eastern? It's really more. I can do this anytime. I pick 9 because it's sort of East Coast. People are sort of done with their day, and West Coast, it's 6 p.m. So lots of people are back from work, and you know, I don't mind running it at different times. I just always sort of think of 9 p.m. for East Coast and West Coast time. So if people want to do things differently or run it on the weekend some point in time, I'm more than happy to do that. Just shoot me an email or pop me a Facebook message. So I'm happy to explore different times. I just think of different times like that. So
yeah, that might be a good poll for the next get together.
Yeah, poll, like what day or time would you like to have these things? Because
I mean, I know we've got some international people in here, and you know, there's never going to be a time that works for everybody, but we can try.
Yeah, or mix it up, like every other one, do a different time, that sort of thing. I'm not stuck on I don't ever sleep anyway. So, any other
I
questions?
think we're,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think we're about midday Australia, and I know we've got a lot of Australia, maybe not in this, but there's a lot of people in Australia who use X-Carve, so this probably isn't a horrible time as far as something that'll work for both, but.
All right. Without further ado, I will. I appreciate everybody. I'll send everybody a quick thank you, and I believe I hit the record button on this, so I'll probably end up posting this on like a YouTube or something once I figure out how to do that, and then send that out on Facebook and the forums, that sort of stuff. But I do appreciate everybody. And again, it's not just for me and Luke. Thank you so much for jumping in and helping out here. I really want personally, and I know a lot of people have that same kind of desire to figure this thing out. It's really cool. Inventables has done a really nice job. I don't ever want to have them think that I'm beating them up, but this X-Carve platform is a great, phenomenal tool. I love it. I love working with it. I love trying to figure it out. As much as I hate making mistakes, I learn a lot from them. I just wish I would make less costly mistakes because I don't know how much wood I've destroyed over the last year. But it's significant. But anyhow.
Part of the game.
Yeah, part of the game. So, and then for the next one, I'll do the same thing. I'll send the invite out to the list from this registration. And then I'll also post it up on Facebook and the forums. Well, and I think feeds and speeds and suppliers maybe like 2 weeks out before I could probably gather enough folks that will provide content for that. And then again, I don't want to be. It's the Paul Ringett show. I just want to get different guest speakers here and hear different voices. So give me a couple weeks and I'll get the next one put together. Very good. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a nice night. Stay warm. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Yeah, and thank you for organizing it.
Oh, yeah, anytime.